Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich talks with community leaders about issues in the public safety arena, sponsored by River Ridge Hardware.
This is Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich with the Sheriff's Report. It's been a little while since we've been on air together. I appreciate everybody tuning in, depending on what platform you're listening to the Sheriff's Report, if it's the podcast or radio. Today, we're going to get right into it because I have a lot of material to try to cover. This is going to be a few days series of information, but still there's a lot of information to cover in this, and I think it's kind of really important at this point in our history to start asking some questions. And I was surprised because I received an email, and in that email it was kind of disturbing because it talked about the media being under attack, and that wasn't the disturbing part. Now, folks, let's make it very clear. A lot of people are going to say, well, the sheriff just doesn't like the media. That's not the case. That truly is not the case. Our founding fathers were very, very wise people. And they understood that in order for us to have a free republic, we have to have a free media. That means the media had to be protected to be able to tell the story the way the story really is, to give us the facts. And with that, the media has a great responsibility because they are a constitutionally protected entity. The Constitution protects them. Matter of fact, the Supreme Court protects them and says they can't be sued, even when they get it wrong, even when they destroy people's lives. You can't be sued. So with that extreme power and responsibility, it comes an extreme obligation to we the people of this country, and that is to drop the opinion and give us the facts. And I'm not so sure that happens very much anymore. So I have a slide deck we're going to go through, and Vinny, if we can bring up the first slide. And as you can see, title is the media under attack? Subtitle is, well, your answer may depend on your involvement with the media. And your answer may also depend on politics anymore. That's a sad dilemma that we're in, but it does. The next slide, as you can see, is the email that I received. Now, for our audience on the radio, I'm just going to read a few pieces of the email. I'm not going to read it all. But it says, and it's a form email, so Dear Ozzie Knezovich, we tend to think of hate directed towards particular people based on their ethnicity or other such characteristics, blacks, Jews, LGBTQ people, Muslims, immigrants, and so many others. But in the last few years, we've also seen hate stoked against the media. Some of us remember learning about the phrase, the enemy of the people, as a term associated with the French Revolution or by Stalin in the USSR. It's been the slide slightly cuts off the narrative, but then it goes on to say, in effect, and it's also wielded by Donald Trump, as well as other authoritarian figures. So there's your politics. And I found it rather interesting that we are going to compare the angst against the media with the true suffering of people like African Americans, our Jewish community, our LGBTQ community, or any community that can be targeted, because almost any community can be targeted anymore. So I really struggled with that. I struggled with trying to understand how an association such as the Bard Center for Study of Hate could draw that type of conclusion, as if angst against the media is anywhere compared to what these groups have suffered. But that's the politics today. That's who we are today. So, as noted in the subtitle, you know, your view of this persecution, if you will, of the media kind of comes from your interactions. And I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, over the 14 years, 3 months, but who's counting, that I've been Sheriff of Spokane County, I've had a lot of interactions with the media. As a matter of fact, most of the media outlets will tell you I'm probably one of the most successful elected officials there is. You call me on my vacation, I do my best to answer. You call me when I'm out of the area attending to a family death, and I'll still answer, especially when it comes in the form of badgering. I couldn't believe it. They actually knew I was recently out of town, dealing with the death in the family, and they wouldn't drop it. They couldn't wait until I got home. They had to have their story. Again, perspectives. And I will tell you that I've had conversations that went like this with media heads, and it went like this. You know, I don't know how that ended up in the story. I never said it. You can verify that. It's on video. Never said it. And as I'm talking with the head of the organization, the reporter chimes in and says, "You're right, Sheriff. You never said that." And my comment back was, "Well, how did it end up in the story?" "Well, because you didn't answer the question the way I thought you should have." And I said, "Have you ever heard of a follow-up question?" "Well, you only gave me one question, Sheriff." I said, "No, I gave you two." And I'll never forget the date. It was in 2010. I'll never forget those interactions. And folks, it's taken 14 years, 3 months for me to get to the position I'm in with the media. It's to the point that I really don't want to even talk to them. I am tired of being played as a foil for their stories. Stories are already written before I ever chime in. They just come looking for the soundbite. That's not news. That's not news. But I am, and I told that to a young reporter just last weekend. I don't know why I even talk to y'all. I never know what's going to end up on the cutting room floor or off the page. But it will be skewed to whatever direction you want to go. So it really does come down to how you have to deal with the media, as your perspective, I guess, is how horribly they're under attack. So if we take a look at the next slide, we have an Inlander story. And Inlander story's title is Spokane Sheriff Says Organizers Demanding Mental Health Chat Instead of Killology Should Fix Their Own Damn House. Pretty interesting title. But, folks, this is what is known as clickbait. Now, if you don't know what clickbait is, it's pretty simple. You come up with the most outrageous type of and sounding title, and people look at it, and they'll click on it. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to read the story, but you click on it, and you might read a couple of paragraphs, and then you're done. And that's shame on us, the American people, that we read or listen to our news in such a fashion. Because usually the truth is somewhere buried about 6, 7, 8 paragraphs below, but the clickbait and the hook are in the first 2, maybe 3 paragraphs, and the title. So, nice clickbait as far as the title, but it's a fairly misleading and, quite frankly, disingenuous title. And we'll get to the reason. Now, this is about a letter that I received with some signatures on it. And folks, I have trouble with the way the signatures were obtained, especially when I read an email that was sent to me from one of the people that was concerned and ended up signing this petition without talking to me. But they signed it, and I don't blame them, because if I would have read the following: Killology, a debunked pseudoscience that claims law enforcement officers should use lethal force sooner and without remorse. I would sign that. I'd most definitely sign that. I'd sign that in a heartbeat. And I don't blame anybody for signing such a letter. I really don't. What I would do is caution you about ever doing so, especially if you know the person that is being referenced by that particular letter, that you could have reached out and just simply talked and found out the truth, because that is not what that training is about. It has nothing to do with that. Matter of fact, folks, I want you to use logic. Now, I know logic has been deemed racist now. I learned that one too. But let's use some logic. Do you think any sheriff or chief would ever have anybody come in and put on training that says that we should use lethal force sooner and without remorse? Do you actually think anybody would do so? If you do, you're totally misguided. You don't understand liability laws, and there's no way we would do that, because we're not about killing people. Contrary to what the media and activists like to portray, we're not about killing people. We're about saving people. And we're going to get into that discussion in the next few weeks. But I don't blame people for signing onto that petition based on that type of rhetoric, except it's sad that they would even think that that would be a viable discussion. So the story points out that, and I'll just read part of the story. We, the undersigned organizations and individual, demand that you counsel The October training you organized for Spokane County deputies, Mindset Boot Camp, by so-called Killology researcher David Grossman and Dave Smith, the letter states. Further, we demand that you cancel any planned community summit with Grossman or Smith in Spokane. Why would they do that? Why would they demand that I cancel the fact that I'm going to bring Grossman in to talk to citizens that are concerned about this training, and so we can have a dialogue, and so we can, could it be they're afraid of the truth? Could that be it? Could we be afraid of the truth? You want me, they demand that I talk with them when I set up a forum where they can actually talk with me and the person they're attacking, they want me to cancel that. They actually go on to call it a sales pitch from Grossman. Interesting. And then they bring up, it goes on to bring up the context of police killings of George Floyd in Minnesota and Breonna Taylor in Kentucky, which reignited protests around the country about police use of force, disproportionately affecting black Americans and people of color. Let's make something very, very clear, crystal clear. If the activists and the media would have calmed down just a second, instead of, as one reporter said, we're your watchdogs, quote, unquote. Well, if you're my watchdog, who's your watchdog? Seriously. If you're my watchdog, who's your watchdog? They would have heard 800,000 police officers in the United States in a very clear voice go, what happened to George Floyd in Minnesota was inexcusable. Totally inexcusable. No one can stand with that because it was horrible. And folks, here's the other side of the lie that you're being told. This had nothing to do with training. Zero to do with training. This had everything to do with people's hearts. See, they knew they were training because if you listen to the video, you'll hear them say, roll the man up on his side. Because when somebody says they can't breathe, you got a problem. Especially when we're dealing with people in compromised positions. But a lot of the people that we deal with are on drugs, alcohol, health issues. When they start saying they can't breathe, you got a problem. It's a medical emergency. They knew their training. What they didn't have the heart is to knock Chauvin off his neck and roll him on his side. That is a fact. The other one mentioned, Miss Taylor. Folks, you need to do some research on that one because I did the research on that one. Sadly, Miss Taylor was killed in a crossfire because the first person to get shot during that gunfight was a police officer. And they want to claim the no-knock warrant. Well, it depends on the news source that you read, and I've read several of them on this one. They either knocked on the door for 54 seconds. There's a debate if they announced or not. It's not as clear as you've been led to believe. You might want to do some research on that. I do research. Still doing research on that one. But sadly, Miss Taylor died in a crossfire. And the first person to get hit by that gunfire was a police officer. That is a sad fact of it. Doesn't dismiss the fact that she died, but there are circumstances behind it. And sadly, those crossfires happen. And we saw the effects of that crossfire in our own home state in Bothell just a few days ago. And it's not only bystanders that end up in that crossfire. So, because of time, I'm going to skip down, but one of the people that crafted the letter, signed on to it, is Deacon Jones, says that he hopes that Knezovich would be open to hearing from impacted communities instead of hosting the event with Grossman. Been willing to do that from day one. Deacon knows my phone number. I've talked to him before. I've been out to promote his efforts in the work that he does with kids, so he knows how to get a hold of me. He didn't take the time. He says, we want to be heard and have the community be able to have a civil conversations with the departments that are policing us, Jones says. The Inlander goes on to say, but Knezovich, reached by the Inlander Friday, is frustrated, calling the groups hypocrites for not wanting to have a hard conversation with Grossman. And I do. I make that, no bones about that. And they don't really want to have the courageous conversation. If they did, they'd come and have the conversation. We go on, and the Inlander article states that Jones agrees, and let me back up, in reference to a comment I made. This is me in the article. I've had dialogues with everybody. I've tried to all those avenues, Knezovich said. I'm really not in the mood for another Groundhog's Day session. And folks, I'm not. I want somebody that's going to help fix the problems. Not just another round of talk. God, that's all government does is talk. That's all we did when, in 2013, the African American youth involved in gangs reached out to their pastors and said, we're tired of watching our friends and our family die. You think we missed a boat on that one? Because we did. What we did was what we normally do. We held a march from one park to another. Activists and politicians got up on soapboxes, said nice words, and we let those kids down. We did nothing. Now, Pastor Sean Davis tried his level best. But in the end, the system didn't change. We didn't do much to help those kids. What could we have done if we could have had that impact? You think I want another Groundhog Day? I don't. I'm done. I'm tired of watching kids die. I'm tired of watching people die. And people on both sides of this are dying. So Jones expresses frustration with his African American leadership. Jones says he's always expected his message to be carried forward by some who are considered leaders in the black community, who often get called to the table, but that hasn't always been the case. While that's not a comfortable thing to say, enough is enough, and more people should be in that conversation, he says. Now, they go on, and here's the quote that they have in here. Maybe they need to fix their own damn house, and I'll be there to help, Knezovich says. But they have to come with solutions, and they have to come not fighting each other, because I'm tired of trying to play peacemaker between the factions, which is true. But here's the kicker. That's not the way that went down. Here's how that actually went down. The reporter said, Sheriff, I'd like to get your opinion. Deacon says that he's frustrated with some of his leaders not saying the things he needs to be said. He's frustrated with them not promoting the things that he's promoting. And my response was, I can't fix that. Perhaps they need to get their own damn house in order. My comment was in direct relationship to a question. What do you think about Deacon saying that? What do you think about Deacon saying that he's frustrated. But that's not really reflected in here, is it? It doesn't say, the inlander asked Knezovich. They didn't. But they put it in here, and then they used it as clickbait up the top. And we wonder why. As I stated, folks, this series is going to take a few days. So next week we'll continue with some more of the Inlander articles that have been out, and we'll also deal with a Spokesman Review article that was written July 19th, this last Sunday. Title of it is Back in the Blue. At least that's the title of it in the print edition. If you go online, it's We Support the Police. But on the print edition that came out on Sunday, the subtitle says, Sheriff appears at rally to decry police defunding. I don't know how the Spokesman Review figured that one out, because, ladies and gentlemen, they never interviewed me. They have no idea why I was at that rally. I can tell you it wasn't to decry police defunding. I'll tell you why I was at that rally. And in closing, it goes like this. On 7/7/2016, I swore I'd never allow this type of situation to form again in America. What type of situation? On 7/7/2016, after our former president went on air in a foreign land about a police shooting that nobody really knew anything about, and that's the way we always do it. We talk about things we know nothing about. When he was done, I looked at my wife and said, things just got worse. And a few hours later, 5 Dallas police officers lay dead, killed at a protest of people there to call them racist and evil. And when those bullets started flying, those Dallas police officers jumped in front and on top of those protesters, protecting them. Ladies and gentlemen, we're heading there again. We want to talk about the demonization of the media? Really? Why don't you do some soul searching and ask what you're doing to the men and women that protect you every day? Maybe the media needs to take a hard look at that too. Because that, folks, is why I was at that rally. I was at that rally because I don't want to see another Dallas. It's like I said, there are people dying on both sides of this. Stoked by rhetoric, stoked by activists, and it's sick. And look what it's doing to our country. The first time it happened was in August of 2014, and that's when this nation started tearing itself apart. And it started tearing itself apart based on a lie. And we'll cover that too. This is Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich with the Sheriff's Report. Have a good day.
I'm former Washington State Representative Leonard Christian, and since I left office, the budget has almost doubled, and the governor signed comprehensive K-12 sex education into law. He's also abused his emergency powers. I'm asking for your support to help me return to Olympia so that I can protect businesses and families. I'm Leonard Christian, the reasonable right candidate, and I ask for your vote.
Paid for by Leonard Christian for State Representative, Republican.
Here at River Ridge Hardware Garden Center, where we have all the plants and flowers that will spruce up your yard, from the lilacs for Spokane's Lilac City to awesome hanging baskets and pots that you can actually put the hanging baskets in. Here at River Ridge Hardware, we want to help you set up your landscape needs. Neighbors helping neighbors at River Ridge Hardware.
Hello, my friends and fellow Republicans. My name is Stephen T. Major, and I'm a candidate for the 5th Congressional District of the state of Washington. It goes without saying that we are living in exceedingly difficult times. We, the people, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, in God we trust. These words have great meaning to me, and I believe to every American. These sacred ideals are under attack right now. In fact, our very liberty is in jeopardy. As your representative in Congress, I will fight for the values and interests of Eastern Washington in our country. God bless you, and I thank you for your vote.
Paid for by Stephen Major for Congress, Republican. Thanks for watching. Ask the host a question, recommend a guest, or check out any of our other programs on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or SpokaneTalksMedia.com. Sponsored by River Ridge Hardware.